Should we watch the game in-game or will you stream? Okay. Yeah, if that's okay.
All right, so welcome back to another week of SVSL. I am Noir. I'm joined once again by Ari, and our first match of the day, getting right into it, it's going to be Sharpedo versus Autowing.
So the matchups here is Rune Abyss versus Forest and Sword. Um, I think both of these are probably. I guess we can start looking at the decks, but I'm not sure which side I would give it to. Forest and Sword, probably, just because of how the matchups go. But it depends on which type of this is.
Yeah, for sure. I
Um,
think Abyss, is like kind of like moderately good into everything. It has a little bit of that scary high roll potential. As long as you have like Lesser Mummy and Rage of Serpents in the deck, you can always just randomly get hit by a two-turn setup out of nowhere. But as you said, Forest and Sword, I would agree, are very favorable in this matchup.
This rune list is fairly standard. It's actually shockingly close to my own. The only distinction is it has one extra foresight compared to mine, which has an Edelweiss. Otherwise, I can't but agree with everything this list does without condemning myself. It's a really solid rune list. It's got the extra Flames of Chaos over Williams, which allows it to be more flexible in sort of its mid-game turns with regards to getting an extra healing, which I think makes it better into both of these matchups, Sword and Forest.
Oh yeah, against Forest for sure, because William is a little bit slow against Forest. It's not really on a turn where you want the AoE clear. It's definitely better to have it be cheaper against Forest. And Sword, it can go a little bit either way. Flames of Chaos, as you said, because it's more flexible, you can boost it on the turn that you play it, and that makes it more useful to clear a singular target like Enhanced Vows. And that's a very, very key point in that matchup, so we'll have to see if that one comes into play.
Hmm. And obviously, even with a few spell boosts, it still manages to completely clear out fairies and whatnot. And then the Abyss deck. Um, so a bit more mid range, but with an aggressive slant. Cerberus and Olivia and Charon say that it's not fully aggro, but it's like mostly.
Yeah, it is basically like an aggressive mid-range, you might call it, or aggro with Serb, depending on how you want to frame it. There's only two copies of Excella in this deck, still a very strong card, but can be a little bit bricky. Of
Interesting.
course, it is like just a very all-in payoff card. You want to see it once per game, probably not more than that. Still combos very well with the Shadow Crypt, which of course goes well with Serb and with just Vuela in general. Just a lot of strong synergies in the deck still. But against decks
Yeah,
like Sword, you are going to have to pass the Aragami check pretty much every game.
for sure. The notable lack of any bats here means that they lack any kind of healing, and so if its matchups into probably Roach is a little dicey. If it gets a little too low on health early, it won't have a super easy way to recover. Notably, though, it also means that it's probably better into Roach because it can afford to go like Odin, which I think is really, really clutch in that matchup, both for finishing out games and delaying burst of like removing an Odin's Godwood staff. So on the whole, I think this is probably one of the better Abyss variants you could take into Roach, but I don't know if it'll do so well into Sword.
Yeah, I think it does have a chance into both decks, but it is all very dependent, I would say, on how the Forest player is able to put together their early game. And same thing with the Sword matchup as well. And then it's like, do you have the Aragami check or do you have this or that? Can really go either way. But moving on to Oddwing's Forest deck, this is standard, very very standard.
Do you think, because maybe this is testament to how little Roach I've looked at, but I've never seen a deck that runs two Bales instead of
Oh
three.
yeah, yeah, I just saw that. As soon as I said that, I was like, okay, slightly less standard, but there are some players that are cutting Bale to two. I personally am not a two Bale enjoyer. I think most players are definitely still on three Bale. I can understand the reasoning. It is kind of a bricky card in a deck that you want to be as free flowing and flexible as possible. but he's just a strong card. It's very tough to cut.
Yeah, it's very tough to cut. I'm surprised that you would be sort of all in on Lambent Cairn here. You're really reliant on that for your zero cost cards. I guess I've not seen it much in practice. How good is this Fairy Fencer card? It's not something I'm really used to encountering.
Yeah, I think Fairy Fencer is really good, especially if you're gonna play Water Fairy or Good Fairy of the Pond in this game. I think those two cards pair very nicely with each other. You have one less Fairy from Fencer compared to Tamer, but you have a 2 playpoint 2/2, which is vanilla stats, and that's actually something that you don't often see in Forest Craft. It's the only 2 playpoint 2/2 that you actually want to play on turn 2.
Yeah, true.
And then Good Fairy can sort of make up for that lack of Fairy generation. It's a 1 cost in your hand as well, which is useful. It's a lot more early tempo. This fights really well into Aggro Abyss. I think it's quite favored in that matchup, especially. And in general, against Sword as well, you can get a lot of early chip damage, which can lessen the need for having additional bails as a zero cost.
And I suppose being able to contest the board more with the Fairy Fence early makes it so you can more safely develop Godwood Staff in the follow-up turns. Because I know there are some matchups where Forest almost has to seed doing that entirely. But I suppose with that, Fencer versus Tamer gives it a lot more room to do so. There's definitely a deck that looks like it will be strong at contesting the board early between Ambush May and Fencer. And then here... Oh, a very interesting sword list. I've got Gelt, Intrepid Vice Captain on my screen.
Oh, we have Ward Sword.
This is anti-roach tech if I've ever seen it. It's got Sharena, Gelt, it's got Grimnir and Luminous Mage 2x. Very interesting.
Wow, that's
and
crazy.
of course Saria as well to pick off. And 2 samurais. This is Roach. This is unapologetic Roach hate. 2 Alberts as well. Oh my god, the longer I stare at it.
Yeah, it's funny though because you do have more wards, but at the same time, one of the more effective ways to beat Roach as Sword is to just smork them, right? If you're able to get a turn to Albert Evil Face, because like they can't always just put up a board every turn, they kind of want to save their Glade or save their Lily Evo reactive to your like Zirconia or your Lumi Mage, and so
It's funny because I think Sword already, if you build them more aggressive, which is how I tend to play Sword, I think they already have a very good matchup into Roach. I think like they're quite favored. So over-indexing like this is obviously going to make that matchup almost free, but it feels like you probably suffer in just about every other one.
Yeah.
Gelt will be fun to see in practice though.
It will be very interesting to see. I have not seen Gelt played by a high-level player, I think, at all. So, aside from
a friend
like,
of mine was playing with it initially, but it didn't quite pan out in testing for pretty obvious reasons.
Yeah, not a very common card, and for good reason. The Hound's also really fallen out of favor as of late, but I guess we'll see. I think...
Yeah, I think the notable exclusion here is... Oh, okay. The choice for Hound over Rose is, I think, a pretty interesting one. Oh, especially because this deck has like Saria and stuff to set her up. So what have they led with? Roach into Ruin, a classic.
Currently a classic, and Auto-Aim on the Ruin is going to go first. Both of these decks actually quite happy with going first or second. What would you think?
With this version of Spell Boost, I think I would almost always want to go second. And I think I'm probably not qualified enough on Roach in this set to speak to it. But I imagine they're probably content either way. They can curve very easily. Whereas I feel like this specific variant of Spell Boost rarely has something it's super happy about doing on turn 4. Especially in this matchup.
Right. Yeah, turn 4 is certainly a weak point for Spell Boost. But 4 play points, to be exact, is a weak point. Of course, going second, you can coin a 5-on-4, and that shores up a lot. It's probably like one of the main reasons why going second is so strong, of course. Coining Kuon, either on turn 6 or on turn 9, is an option as well. Those are quite good. I would say like one of the things that might make going first on Rune not so bad is just the fact that you're taking going first away from the opponent, which may or may not be worth it depending on the matchup.
It's funny you say that. I would have assumed by default I would always rather go second on almost every class and deck. I wouldn't ever value taking it away, but maybe that's just my experience and that's not the consensus.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you're not much of a Forest player. I think Forest is like the deck that really likes going first in general, but it is still good in going second because the coin can effectively be a free zero cost that doesn't take up space in your hand, which is obviously very powerful, but at the same
Mhm.
time, you are still a play point gated deck, and so by virtue of that,
Mm.
you're still going to be very happy going first.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think specifically with this hand, I think our Roach is probably sitting pretty happy. They've got their Roach already in hand and a Glade to back up with some card draw. Rune, having now drawn an Anagrea, probably is not too upset either, though.
Yeah, for sure.
I
And
think they've set
auto
themselves
aim
up
actually,
nicely here for AoE if they need it.
yeah, with the double stage light for sure, and the sigils already building up on board. Auto aim considered for a long time the Tempo May on turn 1, in the end did go for it. There is no bail in hand, which is a consideration as well for whether you want to commit that resource so early. The early chip damage can matter against Rune, but it is a little bit random how much that chip damage actually matters because it's very hard for Rune's opponent to anticipate just how much exactly are they going to heal. Um, but if you are able to perhaps force out like a Sage Light AoE, that's healing off the table.
This is
May
definitely
is
one of the few
popping off a
matchups
little.
where you want to heal with Rune, even if you're just missing like 2 or 3 health, because those break points matter so much when they're trying to kill you with Roach. This is one of the few things you can actually heal, like on these early turns up to 20 and not feel awful about it.
Yeah, and after just gonna go for the Insight, tap the Sigil again, and 2 shiny animated Kuons now
Hmm.
in hand for Sharpedo.
So we've got Anagrea coming next turn, but nothing in hand to actually spell boost with it, which is definitely a shame. Meanwhile, for Roach, they're staring down the barrel of... Do you think you will lure here? Given that you've not got too much else positive to develop, and your opponent has no board worth clearing?
Uh, Allure is not bad. You kind of... It's not bad to see more of your hand, but at the same time, you are expecting to play Glade next turn, and whenever possible, you would like to use other sources of card draw before your Allure, because you can then fuse in cards that you know that you
Right.
don't need once you have that additional information, and then when you draw with Allure, eventually, it'll be a lot more optimized, but at the same time,
Ooh.
ooh, we must
Leaving this for the
choose.
very last second. Won't be able to play anything
Ooh!
if you draw it.
Ah!
Ah.
We opened the circle in the end. I think he wanted to develop the fairy, didn't have enough time in the end.
At least he got
That
off the
awkward.
complication. But yeah, definitely a little dicey there. Not the end of the world to be down a fairy, but you would definitely prefer to have it on board. Not opting for the Anna Grey here. That's so interesting. They don't
Yeah.
need to save the... It's not like they have a Norman in hand where it's saving the coin for. So I wonder what the rationale is to delay developing Anne. Maybe they're hoping they draw into more cards where it's spell boosting, or could top deck on Norman, which they
Top deck Norman
immediately snap play. All right.
is pretty good. I think there is a lot of
Do you?
value in potentially saving the Angria for a turn where the ward is going to be a lot more impactful. Because if you coin it on turn 4, you expect Roach to have Glade or Lily, and so they can clear the Angria, and then the ward just disappears and does nothing. The ward
But
can be a lot more useful on a future turn, though it does force out the answer right away.
But wouldn't you be so much happier playing Norman in response to like a Glade or a Lily? Because here, playing with the barriers when they have 2 fairies on board, as you see, they're able to clear the whole board and still go face. It feels like the Norman doesn't really achieve much here. Like Anne and Greya would have actually probably been maybe better insofar as would have cleared the board. You don't take this little chip damage, and then you could like Norman now to clear this Glade.
Yeah, yeah, I
There's
definitely see
very
it.
possibly something else the Norman is playing around that I'm missing, but it feels like
I think he also
yeah.
wanted to take the opportunity to just heal on that turn,
But
because he healed
he
on turn
didn't.
4. Didn't he?
No, he
Like,
made 2 golems instead of healing.
no, I mean on turn 4, before he played Norman. Because he healed, yeah, he healed on turn 4 instead of coining the
Right, yeah.
Angria. Yeah.
hmm I'm just
And
surprised
then,
that they
yeah.
Normaned on turn 5 instead of Angrea.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Another last second Guardians Allure.
Or
This
last
is
second lure. That's my auto aim always.
as
Kind
a
of
fellow roper, I can relate.
better.
Okay,
Yeah.
not conserving the coin at all. Snap Kuon here.
Yeah, Sharpedo opting to play the matchup very aggressively, just going on to play, put as much pressure onto Roach as possible. Gonna push 5 damage face here and put up a very strong board.
I feel like it's hard to see what the sort of win condition or rationale is with this line though, because like even though you have 2 out-of-hand damage cards in hand with another Odin or Kuon, that doesn't add up to 20. So you're still sort of waiting for you to hit turn 10 to kill, no? And it feels like spending the coin here when you weren't really pressured to delays that by a turn? Or am I missing something?
Yeah, I would agree that in many games, the enhanced Kuon, if you can get it out, like on turn 9, just as early as possible, is like just a huge, like, annoyance for Roach. They often have to like trade a spare Roach just to get rid of it, and by then they might not have many Evo points left to actually win the game with afterwards. But with this more aggressive spell boost list that has Odin in it, perhaps the idea is to just force out more resources, because Auto Aim already played a Glade, and the clear, while it did work, it does leave his hand presumably quite weak going into this second consecutive Kuon. And so I think Sharpedo's idea is to eventually create a situation where these boards are just no longer able to be dealt with.
Yeah, I guess that's definitely the approach. Once you commit to the first Kuon, I suppose it only makes sense to do the same thing again. The line, I guess, then is to try and win on board rather than win by bursting their health. Which maybe is one of the only tactics Rune can take. This is definitely a difficult matchup. They don't usually give you time to scale to 10. But this approach, I mean, we have the luxury of seeing what's in their hand, so it's easier for us to say it probably won't pan
Oh,
out.
the triple Roach? That's not the best. Certainly gonna send 1 here to deal 4.
Yeah. I wonder if, given that you have this second Roach in hand, if you could have afforded to bounce something with Godwood Staff here. Perhaps the Bale back. Maybe you won't have time to develop it before the game ends, but it very much feels to me like there's possibly a line here where you can try to end next turn. You still have your super available. They would be at 10 health.
The problem is we do not have Carbuncle in hand, and we also don't have a source of like 1 play point cards. We have Bug Alert, but we can't just spend a bunch of 1s with our current hand right now. And of course, there are no 0s either. We did have to use the Lambent to buff the Lily to get the clear.
I wonder if that's even
That
more
is
of an argument for bouncing the Bale, though, because you do need cheap cards, and this deck only has 1 other Bale.
Yeah,
But
it's
perhaps
very
the card draw is
difficult
more
to
important.
reduce, though. Oh, Fairy Circle is not bad.
Incredible top deck.
Yeah.
Now, is there a lethal? So you need to deal 5 damage to remove this ward.
There's definitely not lethal on this turn. I can promise you that one.
Okay.
We're gonna have to look for Carbuncle, most likely at this point. But going into 10 play points next turn and knowing that Sharpedo no longer has the enhanced Kuon available, it would have been his 3rd Kuon if he did have it in his hand, but I think even without Carbuncle now, we have potentially 5, 6, 14 damage from hand next turn, and we should be able to get through.
Technically, Fairy Ambush, or sorry, Convocation Fairy Ambush would have been lethal had the ambush hit the ward twice. So there's at least a theoretical lethal.
I
It would have been
suppose,
12 damage.
Yeah, not guaranteed. Yeah, no, that's.
I don't know if perhaps there was some other way, but probably not. Sorry, to catch up to where we're at now. The Gale ends up coming out, leaving them with still a super. And that gives Rune a second to breathe, but with no way to create another ward in hand. It's definitely looking dicey. And they don't spend the last Evo here to clear it.
Yeah, and
Surely...
yeah. There's just nothing left. There is surely, from Sharpier's perspective, lethal for Oddwin. Just slowly putting it together here. No way he can miss this
Perhaps
one.
it's perhaps it's correct not to bother clearing the 1-1, just play to the out that they somehow don't have another roach, even though they've played one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really rough matchup.
It is
So I think
tough.
you can see here that the most pressure Rune could possibly put was basically kind of what we saw of like Norman Evo into Kuon, and still they were able to just effortlessly clear the board every turn.
Yeah, the Glade into the double May turn, into the Lily afterwards with the Karen buff. Very, very good board clears from Automwame, and pushing the 4 damage with that third Roach as the Fireball there is very nice as well. But speaking of tough matchups, here is Sword versus Rune.
Yeah, and this Ward sword that is probably going to struggle here, given that it seems to have sacrificed quite a lot. But luckily it has 2 shots to win, so...
Does have 2 shots to win. Surely it's going to fare a little bit better against the Abyss deck. Even though it's not a full aggro Abyss, the presence of these wards can be very annoying. 2 Kuons are in hand again, very early for Sharpedo.
But at least there's some targets for spell boosting here, which last game we didn't draw until quite deep in.
Just gonna be the Tempo Hound for Autowave. I don't think he runs. Did he run Grimnir? I assume probably he does. It is a ward, yeah.
Yeah, it was one copy
that
of
does
Grimnir.
make sense. Yeah.
Why run any more Grimnirs when Gelt is an option instead?
that's true. That's true. It's a 3/3. A 3 attack is pretty good.
Strictly superior to a 2/3.
Yeah. Commit the Samurai. Probably gonna hold this area and just push face for 4. Hitting face for 4 with the Hound of War is very
lovely
juicy.
top deck. You get to clear the board and retain your 6/6 and develop the crest. Couldn't really ask for a better setup. Meanwhile, from Swords...
This is very, very good here for Sharpedo.
I don't remember whether or not, but I can only assume he was running Zirconia, right? He didn't cut it?
Oh, surely he was.
Yeah. Unlucky then not to have it at this stage.
Yeah.
But at least they had a good clear for the Purging. Snap and Ingrea.
Norm